Okay, so I was playing Deadlock, right? As you do. Trying to get Infernus with Talon only.
Are we there yet?
No.
When I became fixated on this item called Debuff Remover, I thought to myself, what does this item do? And what are the things that are included in negative effects? It seems pretty general. And if it has a 48-second cooldown, what is it even worth using on? So I turned to Google and YouTube, but I really couldn't find a list of everything that Debuff Remover could purge. Sure, people would repeat the 2 to 3 most common uses, but I thought in a game with seemingly infinite ways to apply debuff, there are nine heroes with interactions with debuff remover? That can't be right. Okay, buckle up. It's time to learn about this item. I guess this is my contribution to the community's understanding on this. Maybe we'll see its pick rate go above 1% once people actually know what it does. Here is everything I found when exploring how Debuff Remover counters hero abilities and some items, ordered from what I think is most useful to least, along with some new text that I think I discovered. And if that's not the case, just don't tell me. I'll be sad. There's also a Google sheet linked in the description if that's more your style. Let's start with a brief description of Debuff Remover as well as its precursor item, Debuff Reducer. Debuff Reducer is a 1250 soul tier 2 vitality item that gives you some bonus health, some weapon damage, but mainly its passive, which reduces the duration of all negative effects applied to you by 30%. Currently, this is the only item that has this type of resist. Debuff Remover is a 3000 soul upgrade from Reducer, giving you even more bonus health, a good amount of weapon damage, 5% more resist, but really, its upgrade is to give you an active that you can purge all negative effects with, and when done successfully, it gives you 3 movement speed for 3 seconds. The passive applies more broadly to pretty much everything in Deadlock, with some few exceptions, even working against some abilities that Debuff Remover cannot cleanse, like Mo and Krill or Haze Sleep. Before we get into the many interactions with Debuff Remover, I want to quickly explain the way I think about debuffs in Deadlock through 3 components, as well as how they change across a game. They are effectiveness, duration, and cooldown. Effectiveness usually scales throughout the game with ability upgrades. An example would be Yamato's Slash ability, which increases the fire rate slow applied from 20% to 50% in the first upgrade. There are some items that can lower effectiveness, such as Enduring Speed's passive, which works against movement slow, as well as giving you speed, which is very important in Deadlock, making this one of the most picked items in the game. Debuff duration is generally going to increase throughout the game as your opponents upgrade their abilities or buy items like Superior Duration, as well as some spirit scaling edge cases like Vindicta's Crow. Cooldown in this context is referring to the time between a debuff applying ability's activation and when it can be used again. Items that apply a debuff also have a built-in cooldown for their active component, similar to abilities, or when an item has a passive that applies negative effect, the cooldown is between the first application and any subsequent. Let's take a look at a few examples. Pocket's base affliction ability does 23 damage per second for 18 seconds and can't be activated again for another 127 seconds. Contrast that with the Slowing Bullets item, which applies a 25% movement slow for only 1.3 seconds and doesn't have a cooldown, meaning if someone applies this to you with one of their bullets and you cleanse it, the next bullet that hits you will apply it again because there's no cooldown. You can probably get where I'm going with this. One of these is worth purging with Debuff Remover and one isn't. Here's a quick look at my tier list for hero ability interactions with this item. Keep in mind it's only updated to their most recent patch in this video, which is November 1st, 2024. The main reason I made it was to order the things in this video. So let's get started. Top down, left to right. Starting first in S tier with Bebop. Bebop's uppercut ability does some initial damage to you as it sends you into the air before doing damage and giving fire rate slow to those in a radius wherever you land.
Well, looks like it's up to me.
The timing is actually quite easy here because as long as you activate Debuff Remover at some point in the air, you will negate all damage to your teammates upon landing. Bebop's bomb, along with any Echo Shard bomb, can be fully denied as long as you activate Remover at some point before detonation. If you want to take this a step further, I found that if you activate Debuff Remover a few frames after impact from the uppercut, you can stop it from sending you in the air altogether. This is S tier because with one Debuff Remover, you can deny 2 bombs, 1 Echo Shard activation, and 1 uppercut. You still might die because a good hook is a good hook, but this gives you a chance and stops you taking bombs back to your team. Warden's Flask ability can be pretty oppressive because it applies 3 debuffs to you: movement speed slow, a weapon damage decrease, and at max level, a fire rate slow. All of these can be purged with 1 activation of Debuff Remover. Warden's Trap ability can be purged at any point after it's been cast, including being able to be removed after it locks. Warden is S tier here because he's commonly going to throw all his abilities at you, hoping you fall over, and you can cleanse them all in one go. Pocket's ult is sort of the king of debuffs, as it'll probably get you to 1 HP by the end of its duration at any point in the game. With the current strength of this ability, as well as it being one of the only ults you can counter for this item, paired with easy timing, this is a clear S tier. Vindicta's up to the plate next. Her movement denial ability, the Stake, which late game has silence associated with it, can be cleansed immediately after it's dropped. Her Crow, whose damage and duration scales with Spirit, can also be purged. And with how strong Spirit Vindicta is right now, any way that you can keep your health above assassination range, it really helps. Infernus' Catalyst ability, which on top of damage amplification has a ton of debuffs associated with it, all of which can be purged with Debuff Remover in one go. Infernus' main ability, his passive, Afterburn, does spirit damage over time after a short build-up, lowering the spirit damage of its victims. Late game, this can be pretty strong when paired with some high tier spirit items, and although it can be cleansed, keep in mind that if he's actively shooting at you, he'll probably have enough time to reapply it. Shiv's knives deal stacks of bleed damage over time that stack with every single knife that lands. The initial impact damage cannot be cleansed, but since the damage over time effect stacks, and Shivs usually build in rapid recharge, you can get a pretty impactful Debuff Remover activation if you purge after getting hit multiple times in a row. Mirage has 3 abilities that have interactions with Debuff Remover, starting off with the most useful, in my opinion, Haze Tornado, which lifts you into the air, putting you in a vulnerable position for headshots. You can activate Debuff Remover once you've been fully lifted and can often beat Mirage out of his own ability if he activates it close enough to you. His second ability temporarily steals HP from you, which can be returned early with Debuff Remover, but it doesn't take it from him, so at best it's a draw. His passive has a funny interaction, as activating Debuff Remover simply activates his mark early. This might save you from a 12x, but it's pretty situational. Interesting nonetheless. Seven's Static Charge has a window before detonation that it can be cleared. Purging right before activation can often lead to 7's overextending, expecting to have their stun go off. Although you can't cancel the stun if you place it on himself, if you're the lucky person in a team fight to get this placed on you, having Debuff Remover just might save your team from a big stun. Abrams is the only one on this list that doesn't have a notable interaction with the active component of this item, but the passive just might make up for it. His Shoulder Charge ability comes with a stun when he hits you against a wall, and normally this is enough time for him to land a heavy melee, but if you have Reducer or Remover, the passive gives you enough time to parry an unexpected Abrams. Moe and Krill's first ability, their Heal, when fully upgraded, applies a debuff to the target, giving Moe and Krill an additional 15% damage amplification with every stack. With a few items, this ability can easily have a 5-second cooldown, with the debuff lasting 20 seconds, meaning situationally it might be worth clearing if the stacks get out of control. Their Sandblast ability travels far and disarms enemies for what can feel like an eternity. If you're, for instance, a gun build Wraith, I could absolutely see you debuff removing this to secure a kill. Lady Geist's Life Drain ability creates a tether that heals her and damages you, and when fully upgraded it silences. Activating Debuff Remover fully cancels this ability. Her third ability, Malice, similar to Mo and Krill, applies a stacking damage amp that can be cleared with Remover. Interestingly, Haze's Fixation passive, which gives her increased bullet damage the more stacks she has on you, can be cleared with Debuff Remover. She can often get a ton of stacks with headshots after her sleeve ability, and these can be reset with Remover, maybe turning the tides of a 1v1, but it's probably situational at best. Talon's Trap, when activated, freezes you in place for a short duration before slowing you for a few seconds. Compared to something like Warden's Trap, since there's no warning or buildup, I don't think most players will get a ton of value debuff removing it, although it is possible to do. Similar to Bebop, I found the knockup portion of Dynamo's Pulse and Lash's Slam can be fully negated, although not the damage, if you activate Debuff Remover a few frames after impact. The timing can be pretty hard, and I think the scale goes Bebop being the easiest, Dynamo's slightly easier, especially if he has range, and Lash being last, which takes some practice. I think the timing is easier than super jumping in Apex or reliably short hopping in Melee, but we'll see what everyone else thinks. Game changing, no, because it doesn't negate damage, which most Lashes build, and some Dynamos build. Cool, yeah. I thought it was pretty cool when I found it. Let me know if you agree. But if you're trying to stop Chasm in your ranked games, this probably won't stop that ball from rolling. Most players probably won't get enough reliable value by using Debuff Remover on Dynamo or Lash compared to the easier timing of Bomb Bebop or Warden. And that's why I put them pretty low on the tier list. Yamato's Slash ability applies a 50% fire rate slow for 4 to 5 seconds, but it's probably not worth cleansing since when it's fully upgraded, it only has a 5-second cooldown, meaning she's just going to apply it to you again soon after. Interestingly, you can purge the visual entity of her grappling hook, although it's not going to stop her from falling into the gates of hell and back. Okay, time for items. One thing you'll immediately notice is that there's a lot of them at the bottom of this tier list. This is mainly because they don't have a cooldown associated with their debuff. This means if you cleanse their debuff, they are going to apply it to you anyways with their next bullet or next instance of spirit damage, making it pretty much useless to cleanse on their own. The reason for C tier is their duration is so short that by the time you react to it and cleanse, it's probably about to be over anyways. I'll mainly focus on S and A tier here, but I'll also show you how C tier interacts as well. Knockdown is a stun that is commonly used on heroes who fly or to counter certain ultimates. Since there's a build-up, it is possible to cleanse if you activate Debuff Remover in time. One limitation is that this will not work if you are currently activating your ult, like in Bebop or Lash's case when Knockdown is usually applied while you are unable to activate Debuff Remover. Decay is an active ability that when cast on you lowers your healing by 50%, as well as doing a percentage of your health as a bleed, which scales well into late game. This is often used to counter heroes who depend on sustain and is a great option for using Remover. Escalating Exposure adds a 4% spirit amp on every instance of spirit damage, being able to be stacked every 0.7 seconds. For instance, if someone gets 10 stacks on you out of the 20 maximum, it's a 40% spirit amp for them for the next 12 seconds. These can be cleansed, and usually by the time someone has this expensive item, they have other spirit damage debuffs or high spirit damage in general, so clearing it could save your life. This is often used on damage over time heroes like Infernus or Shiv, and to be honest, it's one of the reasons they're so high on the list. Slowing Hex, when cast on you, stops you from activating any movement abilities and applies a 20% movement slow. Although this item doesn't have a high effectiveness percentage, being a 1250 soul item, the fact that purging gives you additional speed accomplishes the exact opposite of what your opponent wants, usually being used by heroes who want to get up close or lock you down. Silence Glyph prevents you from using any of your abilities for at least 3 seconds. This can be useful to cleanse if you're playing a game when your opponent casts it right before you need to use one of your abilities, like when Yamato is low and wants to ult. The temporary part of Siphon Bullets is like Mirage's Scarabs, and steals max HP, giving it to its holder. The difference here is Siphon Bullets doesn't have a cap, meaning in a given fight, you might have a 500 HP stolen from you, and cleansing during this window will give it right back to you. But keep in mind, it doesn't take it from the opponent, so at best, you're just leveling the playing field. Mystic Reverb is a very popular item that deals an additional 40% of its imbued abilities damage to both you and all your teammates within line of sight in a 16-meter radius, as well as slowing its direct target. Situationally, this is worth activating Debuff Remover on if you know that the imbued ability is a high damage ability like Spirit Talon's Arrow or Geist's ult. If it's only a low damage ability, it's probably not worth it. Once it's cast on you, Withering Whip applies a fire rate slow as well as some negative bullet resist for at least 4.5 seconds. The duration is not super long and it's not extremely effective, so it's up to you if you think it's worth it or not to cleanse. Cold Front applies a movement slow to everyone in its radius, but it's only 3 seconds, so you might be better off with Enduring Speed, or just depending on Debuff Remover's passive, to deal with it. Phantom Strike to me is in a similar boat because it applies 2 debuffs for only 3 seconds, and its main functionality is the teleport, which cannot be purged. Okay, I don't really have an outro for this video. It took me way longer than I expected, but if you learned something new, comment something like Sandbox Sally or my unemployed friend on a weekday. That's all for me, guys. See ya.